Dear deep drinkers, today is a very exciting episode. ArdenHart is a passionate advocate for trans rights, the co-host of the Transatlantic Call-In Show, and a powerful voice in the world of activism. She's known for insightful discussions on identity, deconstruction, and the intersection of skepticism and transgender issues. Her journey of self-discovery and acceptance, coupled with her commitment to evidence-based dialogue, makes her a truly inspiring figure. Let's do this. Welcome, Arden Hart.
Hello,
Transatlantic Queen. How you doing?
Doing great. I love the build up, man. I think everyone's gonna be real disappointed with me actually here. But no, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to have you on. And but before I have a very important first question for you.
Okay.
And obviously, as we start this show each time, we talk about what drink we're drinking, and you've chosen a very fun drink. But usually I'm drinking this at like 8 a.m. or like sometimes 6 a.m. or sometimes, like, God forbid, I've done shots of vodka at 1 a.m. Like woken up for it, and coffee at 2 a.m. So right now it's midday for me. So I feel like, because we're into the PMs, it feels so much better to drink.
Yeah.
So first of all, first question.
Today.
Yeah, exactly. First question is, what are we drinking? And then first, what are we drinking?
So we're drinking margaritas today. And I didn't have time to get proper margarita mix. So we're having, like, it's sometimes called the redneck margarita, sometimes the trailer park margarita. I've got some El Jimador and a Limonada San Pellegrino.
Nice.
But I mean, it's got the right color, right? It's it's probably like half tequila, so good enough for me.
Yeah, for sure. So we had a party at my house. I've got some tequila left over and margarita mix. That's what I'm having. But what I wanted to ask you is, the drink sets the tone of the interview, and keep in mind, I can go for the rest of the day. So I would like you, I don't have a shot glass. I want you to tell me when to stop pouring the tequila part of this tequila mix. So that's the next go. So what are you thinking? Like, should I just start pouring it and we go, or should you tell, like,
yeah, just pour. I'll say when.
Okay, all right.
See how this goes.
Right, so it's a big glass.
I can see. Yep. And right there. Yeah, nice and halfway full. Just how I like it.
Oh, geez. Okay. So I don't know how many shots that was. It feels about 2 or 3 shots, like big shots. So I'll mix this together.
It's
and then
a sipping drink, or you can chug it. I don't know. I'm not your mom.
It is socially acceptable to day drink in Australia. So, it's a badge of honor, actually. So, yeah. So first of all, I have to ask, what's your favorite reptile?
Oh, favorite reptile overall, huh? Well, I mean, are we talking groups, or you want like a specific species?
Well, you like, I just know that you like everything you post at the moment on Instagram, and you've got so much, like, reptiles, right? You go to reptile shows. You saw Aaron Ra there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got 60 snakes. So I don't remember the exact number, to be honest.
60?
Over 60, yeah, 60 something. There's 40 in one, and then there's another one of 10, and then there's one of 4, and then there's another 4 down in the living room. So we breed snakes, is why. So we have a lot of snakes. And then we have 3 bearded dragons. I have a Euromastix right here, but it's nighttime, so he's asleep. And then I have 4, 5, 6 crested geckos right now. So we have a lot.
That's amazing. So that's amazing. I went to a friend's house recently, and they had a snake, and I didn't think I was scared of snakes. And then I was like, "Can I hold it?" And then when they went to give it to me, I was like, like I froze up and I held it, but I was like, oh my God, I'm holding a snake. But yeah, like that experience, I was like, maybe I should get into snakes. And then seeing everything you and Aaron Ra are putting online and like everything that you guys have, so I'm like, maybe I should get into snakes. I like snakes.
Snakes are awesome. And y'all have in Australia, because you have the exporting laws for your wildlife, you actually have a lot of snakes that I would love to be able to get, but I can't. So I'm a huge fan of ones. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what snakes. Like I'll look them up.
Sure. So the Aspodites genus in Australia is like the Wilma python or the black-headed python. So Aspodites ramsey or Aspodites melanocephalus. Those are two amazing. We have, so Wilmas are a little bit more bitey. The blackheads melanocephalus are slightly less bitey, but they're a lot larger. We have a Wilma who's in absolute insane lunatic. She's a big jerk, but we love her anyway. And then we have, yes, this is melanocephalus. They get a little bit bigger, but in Australia, y'all have some morphs of pretty much everything, like bearded dragons, pagonas, the carpet pythons, and like children's pythons and things like this that we have here, but we only have the lineages of the ones that were exported before y'all introduced those really intense laws. So you guys have bred there, since you have access to the native populations, so many different morphs of all those species that we can't access anymore. So you can get a lot of really cool stuff in Australia that people here in the States would never be able to get. So yeah, sure. Definitely anything in the Aspodites family would probably be, or genus would be a really cool. I would love to see what kind of other morphs you guys have there.
Yeah. So there's we live you know Australia Zoo, like Steve Irwin, remember like the crocodile hunter?
Yeah.
So him and Bindi and oh my gosh,
is it Robert, his son?
Yeah, Robert Irwin. Yeah, they all like live like down the road, and our roommates used to work there and stuff, so it was really cool. Yeah.
That's so cool.
But, yeah, it's good fun. But the last time I saw a snake in the wild was about a year and a half ago, and I was walking with my dog in the new like suburb around here, and we hopped over this like bunch of shrubbery, and then there was a black snake just standing up, like we kind of surprised it. And my dog didn't see it, and I like jumped one way, my dog went the other way, and he thought it was like a game, so he ran off into the bush, and I like just like having fun, like my vehicle, and I'm running the other way, and I trip over, I sprain my ankle, so I'm like hobbling, and I'm like, and I'm
oh
like,
my God!
And then I talked to my friend, and he's like, man, like they don't, because I know that some snakes like they'll chase you, like in Australia they'll chase you and they'll kill you, like they're really aggressive. Or maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, because I knew nothing about this. But.
Yeah, there's not really many snakes, if any, that will chase you down.
Really?
If they think that you are coming for them, they will pick a fight with you. But basically the rule of thumb when it comes to venomous, dangerous snakes, I mean, and if you're afraid of, and you're just assuming, you're not familiar with the local species or whatever, the rule of thumb is just don't fuck with it. Leave it alone. Sorry, I don't know. I don't want to.
No, you swear away.
Okay,
swear away.
Yeah, don't fuck with it. Like snakes are always going to be defensive, not offensive. So if you don't fuck with that, it won't fuck with you. Just if you see it, no, you didn't. Go the other way, and everything will be cool. Even like the really, really big, scary snakes that you like, reticulated pythons and Burmese pythons and things like that. They're not aggressive at all. Those are big, giant teddy bears is what they are. But even like the really scary ones that y'all have in Australia, they're generally not going to be offensive and going for you. They're going to, if they attack you, it's because they think you're going for them and they feel threatened.
I love that you're educating me, because like I said, I was like, I've heard some snakes chase you, and so that's why I was like, I freaked out and jumped and sprained my ankle and all that stuff. And what's worse is, because I jumped, I was like making sudden movements. That's definitely like I just everything was wrong. Like, and I was worried that my dog was going to get into a fight with it. And I'm like, bye dog. But it ended up being fine. But yeah, thank you for educating me, because it's most snakes, like this is what Steve Irwin used to always say, like they're fine. You just don't don't mess with them. Like don't like corner them and like start hitting them with a stick or anything like that.
Right.
So we normally just.
waving your hand can make them think you're an aggressor. That's actually like a way to like hypnotize oh, why am I blanking? Like cobras, hooded cobras. That's like why
Oh
they'll
yeah.
do like a lot of this motion, because it kind of brings their focus on you, and then you can like get them from behind or something like that. So
Is that like what snake charmers and stuff do? I don't know enough anything about this lore, but like,
yeah, I
is
don't know
it like,
exactly what snake charmers do. I'm not super educated on
yeah.
what like their specific tactics are, but there are definitely ways you can like manipulate snakes' behavior. The nice benefit we have over reptiles is a nice prefrontal cortex to plan our movements and actions in ways that they can't do. So
I love that. I'm the Australian, and you're telling like it's just a bad Australian, bad Australian. But we normally read out super chats at the end, but I have to read out Dr. Ben, who's the favorite TACIS host, and why is it Ben? You've got so much love here. Jimmy Snow, he's too sick to fuck himself. He's afraid.
yeah, I know, poor guy.
The best reptiles are Skyrim dragons.
Right.
But yeah, you got the crew from the line of shown up, which is really nice to see.
I love that.
Yeah, so I have to ask the question though: why is Ben your favorite co-host or host?
No, I think Ben's my favorite co-host because he's a great punching bag. No, just kidding. I love you, Ben. I know we pick on each other really hard over on Transatlantic. It's just kind of like a love language that Katie and I both had, and so it just kind of has dominated our show. And whether it applies to Ben or not, whether Ben communicates that way, he has been the recipient of that love language quite a lot on the show. But no.
So I've said this and like to you over in private chat, but I really appreciate what you guys do over the line, especially the Transatlantic Call-In show. I think it's so needed in this day and age of like the Elon Musks and the Jordan Petersons and the Ben Shapiros and the what's that douchebag's name? Oh god, he's the worst. He's the worst of them all. No. He's worse than Andrew Tate in my opinion. I don't like Andrew Tate at all, but he made that documentary. What is a Woman? That
Matt Walsh.
Yeah. I want to punch him in his stupid little face so bad.
There are so many that I'm like, I can't even bring it to mind.
But what you do is you have this call-in show, and let me just like bring it up. The line, it's an amazing show. Let me just switch tabs. But you have this show where people can call up and talk to real trans people and ask questions. So this is the line, the whole kind of channel. But you have like let me go to home. I think you have the Transatlantic Call-In show. So you have heaps of episodes, and people just can call up and talk to real trans people and ask questions without all like the politics and the well, there's probably some politics in there, but you know what I mean, without all like the info, like the drama that goes on in the headlines and things like that. And I think it's just really, really, really needed in today's age.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we so Katie and I came up with the idea for TACIS because it was like 2.5 years ago or something like that now, and she messaged me, and we had connected because we were both doing some atheist stuff, and we did a thing together, and then we were kind of talking about like, man, there's nothing really out there that talks about trans issues from a skeptic's perspective, where like people can actively answer. There's so much stuff that you see on social media all the time, like trans women's participation in sports, or whatever, all these like really inflammatory conversations. There's never facts included. It's always a lot of how people feel, how it makes them feel, which is usually trans people icky is the big feeling they like to talk about a lot. Even if they don't say those words, that's usually the definition of it. And so we were just kind of like, I want a show that's kind of like, at the time we said AXP, although maybe now we would have said the Sunday show. Not throwing shade, maybe a little shade, but we just wanted a show where we could take calls actively and from a skeptic's perspective, with actual like facts and information, do our best to address these claims that people are making about trans people and a lot of the propaganda that we see that's just so widespread and so pervasive in the culture. I think we are really in the heat of a trans panic, as it were. You know, sort of like
Definitely.
when the gay liberation movement started in like the 70s, there was just so much pushback. The orange juice commercial lady, Anita Bryant, was going on talk shows, morning talk shows all over America, talking about how gay people are, you know, going to be coming into the bathrooms and indoctrinating your children and all this stuff we're hearing now. And so we just really wanted a space where we could like I'm sick of answering these questions, you know, from one-off strangers and constantly all the time on Twitter. I want to have a place where I can sit down, actually have a conversation with someone and address the things that they say directly. And so that's kind of how that started. And I'm really glad that we've done it. Sometimes it still weighs on me. I don't love sitting in the worst parts of conversations all the time. Sometimes it gets old really fast and I'm like, man, I've addressed this hundreds of times. But at the same time, I try to have patience knowing that everyone is coming in, starting from a different point. And, you know, they may not have countered this information yet. And we've had a lot of really good, productive conversations where when we presented people with information, they actually were like, oh, I didn't know that. And they actually kind of like took it in and digested it. And maybe they didn't change their views right there on that moment, but at least that's now, you know, the only thing in their brain isn't the propaganda. They have the propaganda point and the actual facts about the situation, and how they decide to sort that is their business. But at least, you know, we're being able to provide that sort of voice of reason on the conversation. So that's the goal. And I think we are largely doing that. We don't always get the most sincere callers, which is a little frustrating. And we thought that this, because as you pointed out, it's such a hot button topic that we thought like for sure we're going to get tons of callers right away who want to get right into all those points. And we get maybe a good caller or two on an episode. That sounds shitty. I don't mean to talk badly about the other callers, but you know, the actually productive in that way.
Yeah. My inkling and my background is in marketing, so I'm always looking at things from a marketing perspective. But my background is not my background. It's already affected me. See, I told you I said I used the wrong words.
I made your drink too strong. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. So my inkling is that it's not actually a well thought out issue. It's a reactionary thing, and as a result, people don't have like legitimate questions. Like people have like they'll see like Arnold Schwarzenegger with a wig on, like beating up someone in a ring or something, and being like, "This person says they're a female, and then therefore like this is stupid, the wokeness or whatever." Like they'll, you know, and it just goes like they're just reacting to headlines, and the media industry, you know, just pushes these headlines because it's good. They also have like it's good for business, but it's also it's like a self-perpetuating thing that just continues to build. And I wonder, like, because like, you know, just recently, like I had a going away. I just left my job of 11 years and I had a going away dinner, and one of the older, you know, managers of the company, he came up to me and goes, "What the fuck's this?" He's like, he was so confused. He had an email on his phone. He's like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "What is this?" And I'm looking for it. And he's like, "There." And it said that someone from another company had emailed them and said, and then had she/her after their name. And he's like, "What does that mean?" He's like, and he was really confused. Like he was calling other men. He's like, is it? He didn't understand it. Like he wasn't being like, he actually didn't. He'd never seen pronouns. And I was like, and I like tried to explain it to him, and everyone was like, straight away, everyone, like, we're drinking in a bar, and it's mainly like all the, you know, I worked in a very construction based industry, and it was you know, everyone's like, you know, it's rubbish, like, you know, all this stuff. But then when I was like, no, and I like just laid it out, and I was like, it's very simple. And it's not only it's very simple, it's like almost everyone can get on board with it. Like I feel like if you just sit down and you're like, hey, look, this is actually what it is. It's like, oh, that makes sense. So I mean, I'm rambling, but yeah, I definitely am. But
no, I was saying to the incident, but sure.
Yeah. But like gender isn't simple, but the concept is very simple. But what you do is, and what you guys do is just phenomenal, because you give that space. And I have a feeling that the reason why you don't get like a huge amount of like callers is because it doesn't have, people's beliefs are just reactionary. It's not based on substance. And I think what you're doing is bringing that substance. And that was me just gloating over you guys for a little while, but yeah, anyway,
it's appreciated. It's definitely a passion project, and it's to see that it's grown to where it has is really meaningful to me. So yeah, I appreciate it. Gassing up the show.
So but, and this is something I just to put a pin on this, but something that when Shannon Q came on, my fear amongst the realm of skepticism and the conversation around these issues is that someone hears like a bad faith actor like Matt Walsh or Jordan Peterson say something really hyperbolic, but it sounds it's rhetorically effective. It gives a question in their mind, but the question is asked like 9 times out of 10 as by a troll, right? I used to worry that what would happen when someone came to like I don't know, the Atheist Experience or some show before you guys had a thing coming on, and they would ask like this hyperbolic statement and they would get met with fire, because 9 times out of 10 it is a troll question, but 1 times out of 10 it might not be a troll question, it might be someone who's legitimately confused, and then they get yelled at because you got someone like defending their like identity, and then they turn around like, wow, I was just yelled at by these skeptics online and stuff, and the alt-right is there with open arms going, we told you, they're all crazy, come here. And then like I was worried that it was like building more radicals on the other side because of how touchy the subject is. But what and just to finish, well, that's what I love about your show is you take these people, like you take them on and you have reasonable conversations. So oh my God, that was a long amount of me talking about how good you guys are. Anyway, so it must be profound to sit in that seat and like, we're talking about this stuff as a transgender woman yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and like how you came to grips with that, and I guess like your journey of self-discovery and acceptance?
Yeah. So my story is a little.
If you need to take a big sip of tequila.
Yeah, free. Maybe I'll finish off this first glass.
Yeah, I better catch up.
My story is a little unconventional. So I probably got sort of my first inklings of being trans around like 5 or 6 or somewhere in there. That's kind of like where a lot of my first memories of that stuff are. But I went to a private Christian school growing up for kindergarten through like 7th grade. I don't know how that equates to school years in Australia.
Yeah, I think that's about. We go to high school like grade 7, grade 8, and there's no middle school. There's like primary school and high school. Yeah.
Yeah. So kindergarten is like the first year, and then through 7th grade. So it was like sort of into middle school, what we would call middle school, was where I was in that private Christian school. And I think I got some pretty heavy rules about what gender was pretty early. And it was pretty clear to me that like, I had several instances where I think I tried to express myself and was met with very clear, quick, and not exactly cruel, but harsh pushback at like, no, these are what the boxes are. This is where you fall. And so it was pretty easy for me to know that regardless of what I felt, I was supposed to be a boy. I was supposed to fit in with the boys. And I think on top of that, the school I went to, our approach to the Bible was very biblically literal. And so, I had been hearing about what an abomination gay people were for a long time. And I think in my mind, I was like, well, those people are disgusting freaks, and I'm not a disgusting freak, so I must just be a normal boy. It was kind of how I think I rationalized it. And that kind of followed through. There were maybe a few incidences throughout the first like 6 years of primary school for me that I sort of it bubbled up or became a thing, or I had a chance to like express it and there was some sort of conflict over it. without going through like every nitty gritty event. I mean, we can get into them if you want to, but
yeah, I would actually like to just. Sorry if for interjecting, but what are some examples of like feeling like I don't feel like I connect with this, but I'm supposed to? Like, what are some examples of that?
One really prominent example in my brain is I have a lot of cousins. My mom has a lot of siblings, and they all have a lot of kids. My mom only had me and my older sibling, but my cousins liked to dress me. I was the baby for a long time in the entire family, so they liked to. I was a dress up toy to a lot of my older girl cousins. And I remember having like this one situation where with the most devout religious family, one of those cousins was just like a year or two older than me. We were really close, and she wanted to play dress up. So she brought me up to her room. She dressed me up like a girl, and her dad was around the house. So she was like, I want to go show you off to our moms, but we have to sneak our way down to where they are, because if my dad sees you, we're going to get in trouble, like big trouble. So that was one of those things to me where I was like, it was very clear where I was like, man, I like how I look. I like how I feel. I like dressing like this. But it's very obvious that to other people, me doing this is a very big deal to them for whatever reason. And I remember to asking my cousin after, we made our way down to our mom's and we did a little dance or something and went back. I remember being like, oh, next time we should get hair extensions so I can have long hair. I want to have long hair with it too. It's like, oh my God, that'd be amazing. And then when we got in the car, I remember my mom saying something to the effect of like, so my parents were divorced and they had split custody. Her saying something to the effect of, so I got to bring you over to your dad's and we're not going to talk about that. That's what we did here today. And like in hindsight, my mom's like my biggest supporter. She didn't mean for that message to have like such a lasting impact on me. But like for sure, the message multiple times in one day of like, the men in our life cannot know that you transgress gender boundaries was very, very loud. Yeah, I mean, and then like I wanted to grow my hair out in elementary school, and we had very strict rules because it was a private Christian school about how, boys could only have hair at a certain length. I had teachers pull me aside like multiple times and be like, "You've got to cut your hair. You've got to cut your hair." There was one event where we had a Christmas event called Red and Green Day, and I had my cousin paint my nails red and green. And when we got up my class on the auditorium like stage to show off our red and green outfits, I went like this to the camera to show off my nails. I was like, look at my nails. And I had my teacher reprimand me for that. No. And my dad told me that was bad. I shouldn't have done it anyway. And if I'm going to do it, I'm supposed to look at my nails like this. This is how men look at their nails. Men don't do this.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of like really strong messages about like me transgressing gender boundaries. And I think I just internalized really early. I didn't have a phase of like fighting my parents on the gender thing because like I think the message was pretty loud and clear. I wasn't going to win that fight. I was a boy and boys were this. And that was just the end of the story. So those are a few examples. I think there's probably some more, but now I'm drinking and yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Keep drinking. This is the deepest drinks. I shouldn't encourage drinking. You don't have to drink if you don't want to. But
I love drinking.
When I was that's so different because I think everyone dresses up when they're kids, and for me, I was like, I'm going to dress up, and I dressed up. My mom took photos of it, and I brought it into school and showed everyone for show and tell. And it was like, I still can't believe I did that. Everyone was laughing, and it was funny. But this other time, I remember my mom, I was like, Mom, I want to put nail polish on. She's like, yeah, cool. Like I was just, we're just bored. And me and my little brother, we just like put nail polish on. And then we're like, okay, how do we get it off? And she's like, I don't have nail polish remover. Mom was like, I don't have nail polish remover. And we're like, what do you mean? And we couldn't get it off. And we're like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm going to school tomorrow. And we had to, I remember like riding our bikes with this nail polish on to my friend's house who had sisters to see if they had nail polish remover to try and get it off because we didn't know how to get it off. It was the funniest story. But yeah, it was very much, but for me, it was very much like, I didn't feel like liberated or anything by like that. I didn't like, it wasn't like something, So it was very different. So continuing on with the story, so like there were some of the experiences you had, but then how did you go from thinking gay people what is it, icky, he said, or gross, and you're not, so they're bad, so you don't want to, like, how did, continue the story a little bit, how did you go from there?
Yeah, I think eventually enough like media stuff about people who were born a man and became a woman or something to that effect kind of came into my field of view. I mean, I can think of multiple cartoon instances where I remember like my heart beating rapidly because like there was a magical gender transformation on a cartoon and me being like, oh my God, that's a thing. Like obviously it's magical in the cartoon, but then I specifically remember watching Transamerica, which was it Felicity Huffman? Let me look that up. It's a movie that came out in like the early 2000s. Yes, Transamerica. Yes, Felicity Huffman and Kevin Zegers, something like that. I don't know how to pronounce these names, but Felicity Huffman in this movie played a trans woman who was like meeting her son, who was like a porn star or something like that. That was the first time in the real world I got an image of somebody that came out in 2005. So I would have been 10 years old at that time. Where I kind of remember it really entering my brain that like, that's not just a magical cartoon thing that can happen, but like there are people in the real world who actually do live as a different gender than the one they were born as. And I think I was a kid of the internet. And so the first thing I did was like, wait for my parents to be both at work, and then was like, I have to fucking Google this shit. I have to know what's going on because that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And then I just encountered a lot of examples through the internet of trans people existing. And it was around 13 or 14. I think it was just before my freshman year of high school that I asked my mom to have a conversation. And I was told her, I think I'm a girl. And she was like, I don't know what that means. And I was like, I don't either. But I've seen these people on the internet and like on like all these talk shows and things. And I think this is me. And my mom did the best thing that she could have done, I think, in that situation, which was found a local therapist who connected me to a therapist who was actually trans himself. I didn't know it until like our second session or something like that. And he really helped me kind of initially kind of come to understand things as much as I could at that age. And so I actually made the effort to transition when I was about 14, my freshman year of high school. I was already talking to the therapist, and so back then the guidelines were that you had to be presenting as your gender or be talking to a therapist or something like that for a period of like 6 months or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. But there were a lot more strict rules back then. So I was going through that period and meeting endocrinologists. You couldn't get this medicine from your primary back then. You had to go to an endocrinologist, like someone who specializes in hormones and things like that. And they got me started on puberty blockers. I know those are the real controversial one, right? They're like, yeah, they're irreversible damage. They were not irreversible damage. I was on them for about, I want to say like 6 to 9 months, maybe. And then they switched me over to HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And my sophomore year of high school, which is like year 10 for us, I was homeschooled. My parents homeschooled me, and I just went to school to do like drama and chorus because those were things that I loved that were artsy. It was pretty safe in those parts of school for me. So I was able to like still be in contact with my friends, but kind of transition under the radar, sort of. But it didn't remain under the radar for long because I lived in a very, very, very small town. It was in the middle of nowhere, northern Vermont. Like there's like 2,000 some odd people in our hometown. And granted, the high school pulled from like 5 counties around because it was like the only high school that everyone could go to. So it was a lot broader of a reach at our school than just the county, but it was a small, very small world. And I got really badly harassed and bullied. I got death threats on the phone pretty repeatedly. I was called an it and a thing all the time in person. And
oh God.
yeah, it was pretty difficult for me. I didn't really handle it all well, and I was severely depressed, and my parents didn't really know what to do because they had never ever even heard of a trans person before, outside of like jokes, let alone had one in their life. Doesn't mean to have like depression and all of these bullying issues on top of it. They just really didn't know what to do. And basically, I realized at about 17, after bullying and or not 2017, when I was 17 years old, I decided I was going to detransition. I said, just basically, if it's going to be this difficult to be a trans person in this world, I would rather be miserable and force myself to try to be normal and have like, at least have like a partner and someone I love and like a job, like or have a life, than be in the position I was in all the time. So I went through a period of detransition from 17 to about 22. I went to college and tried to like erase that part of my life, because that in my hometown, everyone knew who I was. I couldn't get away from it. But at college, I was like, I can start over. I can start fresh. People aren't going to know that about me. So I really tried to rebuild. And it wasn't sustainable. I had total fucking mental breakdowns. I had full dissociation episodes where I would like black out in class and wake up at home, like under the blankets, and be like, I don't even know how I got here.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. I was hospitalized twice. I went to like outpatient facilities a bunch for like severe depression and suicidality. And I don't know if there was a specific point. I even joined a fraternity when I was in college. That's how much I was really trying to be a boy.
Yeah, you're trying to like bro down, like crushing beers on your head and stuff, kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I was trying really hard, and I don't know. Eventually, I just hit a point where it was like, the problem is that I feel like I'm still trans, and I don't want to be. And that was the core of all of my dysfunction in my life, like 100%. I was like, I know it is that this thing still exists in me, and I can't accept it and I can't tolerate it. So I basically just went on like a intense journey to try to like read like feminist literature and read memoirs by women and review the literature on like trans healthcare, and just try to like really holistically try to reprogram my brain's messages about like queer people and women and sexuality and all of those things, and really like try to undo the shame complex that was like so deeply wired into me. And luckily, I feel like I was pretty much able to do that. By like 22, I was like, well, regardless of whether or not I end up going, all the way with transition or whatever you want to say, I was like, I think I want to do hormones, and I think I want to get like laser hair removal. So those were like 2 steps that I started at. I was like, I'm going to do those things and see where it goes. And really, after I started hormones, it was done. I was like, nope, I feel so much more alive and like actually present for all of my life. And I was really fortunate. My best friend, who was my roommate all through college, is still my best friend. Genuinely one of the best people in the entire world. I'm gonna cry just thinking. He's genuinely like so overwhelmed me with his support, because it was like, with what I went through in high school, I was like expecting to have no one, basically. Be like, I'm on my own again. But he stuck through, and he's always been there, so he's a real one.
Oh wow. Oh, that is just so, it's so I can't even relate, like it's so when you're going through the experience of, I guess, trying to detransition, what did it feel like? Did it feel like you were putting on a mask? Did it feel
yeah.
like you were trying to do something, but it just wasn't really taking?
Yeah, so alongside me choosing to detransition was me meeting who was at that time my girlfriend for 3 years, and we were really, really close, but I knew that, like, me being trans was a little bit of an issue for her, and so, like, my relationship with my dad, we used to be so close when I was little, and even when I detransitioned, it never went back to what it was, but I was kind of like, if I do this, I'm not gonna try and think of like a stand-in name, Carol. I'll call her Carol for now. I was like, I'm gonna do this, and then I'll be able to keep Carol in my life, and maybe my relationship with my dad will kind of come back into play, and like that will make me, in spite of the awfulness that it makes me feel all the time, and makes me feel kind of like a fraud, and like everyone sees through what a big fraud I am because they all know this thing about me. At least I'll be able to like get through life. If I have a partner and like my family, like I'll be okay. It's kind of my mindset. And I don't know, it just it was obvious to me that when I walked around in my hometown that everyone saw me as a bit of a freak. I think they still look at me that way, to be honest, because it's a small town. When I go home, everyone knows exactly who I am. Yeah, I think I feel like I see how they interact when I'm not there. When I come into the picture, it's very, very different. And so yeah, I just kind of was like, I don't know. It was definitely a performance, and that was kind of why I was excited about college and getting to erase my past and kind of like try to rebuild, because it was like, it, even if that's going to be difficult and I'm going to be alone, like maybe people seeing me as normal will like make me feel good or make me feel like accepted. But none of that did, because what I needed was to accept that I am trans and I'm a woman, and I just needed to learn to accept that, regardless of what other people think, regardless of whether they think I'm a freak or whatever. I needed to like me for me, and I was just not anywhere near that at that age.
If
Yeah.
it's like you're swapping one conflict for another, like you're like, okay, well, at least I won't have to deal with this like emotional conflicts, but I'll be taking on this other one by, that it just it sounds very hard, very, very hard. And were you Christian through a lot of this, or did you deconstruct your Christianity at a certain age?
I had
Are you Christian
deconstructed
now?
Christianity pretty no. I had kind of stopped believing pretty young, actually. Like, the last time I really remember being a Christian was when I was about 10 years old, and I was, no joke, praying to God like almost every night. Like, I I would love for you to let me, in my sleep, live an entire life as a girl, and then when I wake up, I will be a good Christian boy. And it was like a lot of those kind of prayers, and a lot of just trying to like feel the thing that everyone talked about feeling. And the church I went to was very charismatic too, so there's a lot of speaking in tongues and hands in the air and feeling the presence of God kind of thing. And I just didn't get any of that. Never once did I feel it. And I tried. I genuinely tried so hard. And I went to the private Christian school where I read the whole fucking Bible probably multiple times over. Like, I wasn't unfamiliar with what I was supposed to feel or what the beliefs were. It just I didn't feel it. And so it was pretty easy for me by like around 10 or 11 to just kind of start to be like, I think God might be kind of in the same category as Santa Claus for me. But I did get really into woo for like from like 15 to like 20. So I was really into like,
oh, like woo, as like I thought that was like a god. I was like, what's woo?
No.
You mean like like crystals and like I don't know, voodoo or something, or like
Yeah,
not voodoo,
crystals
but,
wasn't my niche, but it was that kind of
yeah.
stuff. Like I was into like out of body meditation and like past life meditation, and I was like, oh, I can like connect with like the past lives. Like I convinced myself that the reason I was trans was because I had a past life as a woman. That was one thing I told myself for a long time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which was like a good excuse, right? Like it kind of makes sense. Like, if you're looking for a reason for why you would do something like that, it was a convenient excuse. But I sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it is interesting that people like seem to have this need for something spiritual. Like it seems like, and I don't know if that's just culturally, like you're brought up that way. But like even like when I was when I was deconstructing my faith, one of the things I used to do is I remember I was going through a really hard time with anxiety, and I've got OCD and stuff, and I took my camera, I do landscape photography, and I'd go do landscape photography, and I listened to Waking Up by Sam Harris. I know Sam Harris has his problems, but that book, amazing, and it kind of introduced me to like a more a kind of spiritual-esque perspective of the world that wasn't necessarily spiritual. So like meditating for the sake of like calming your brain, or like this wasn't in the book, but like when I look up at the stars and like think about the vastness of the universe, I just tremble at awe kind of thing. Not to sound too biblical, but like I get, there's things that, or when I think about evolution, even I just go like, whoa, like the diversity to think that we brought our beagle in to get desexed, and like 3.4 billion years of evolution just like snipped off, like his line has survived, and we just like cut it off because we can't be bothered with him like rooting our couch cushions and stuff. Is just so funny, and also like
when you frame it that way, yeah, it's pretty funny.
yeah, it's like, you know what I mean, like his line has survived 3.4 billion years, and it's just like, go on, this is like, nah, $300, we'll just pay to get his nuts cut off. So have you replaced that with anything like yourself, like since you got into the woo? What's your woo now?
I think I mean, it sounds like I'm similar to you, where I didn't read Sam Harris's book, but it was pretty easy for me I actually just reviewed the literature. So when I went to college for psych, and like one of my focuses was research, and so I got really into just like reading papers. So it was very easy for me to be like, oh, like meditation is actually a really strong evidence-based practice for coping with a lot of different forms of psychological distress. And so and because I already had that foundation of meditation from the woo-woo stuff, it was actually really easy for me to like just kind of like enter that space and just use it scientifically and like practically. And I'm not good at being consistent with it, I'll say, but I still feel like when I just sit down like once every other month or so and just do like a 10-minute, I'm like, man, I feel it. The effects that it has on me is so profound. And I also genuinely like looking up at the stars is one of those things that for me is like just a really profound thing. Like humans have been doing this for generations and generations. And, when you're sifting through all the bullshit of like trans rights issues and like, people think I'm a freak, and like, we don't have healthcare in America, and like everyone's fucking their guns everywhere. It's crazy to just be like, like just looking at the stars feels so nice. And it feels like I'm connected to like humanity in some broad way, and not in like a woo-woo way, but just in like emotionally, it feels really good to be like, I don't know, just grounded in like my humanity. And I think I still hold
like
on
touch
to a
grass
lot
kind
of
of thing. Like,
Can you say that again? What was that?
Oh, it was like touch grass kind of thing. Like, like God forbid go camping or something. You know what I mean? Like, get out there and like, being in it. Funny with the meditation, I used to do a lot of meditation. Not a lot. I did a little bit. Like I'm talking, I could probably count like probably 50 times or something I've meditated in my life. So not a huge amount, but I have done it for a long time, and I got given a float tank experience for my birthday. But it was like a couples one, and let me tell you, that's not the right environment for me. Like, so I bought a couple to go by myself, because the experience is you get naked with my you should see my wife. She's stunning, and I get naked with my wife, and so my mind's not in the realm of that. And then we're floating in the tank, and all I can think about is like how hot she was. But then also like I'm floating around in this tank, and I'm like, I'm like, my nose ring. I was like, the salty water would probably be good for like my nose ring. So I like put some on my face. Then it goes into my nostrils, and I'm like burning. I'm like sneezing. So I sit up, and the water's splashing around, and Amy's bobbing up and down. And then I'm using the spray bottle to spray the water in my face to get the salty water off my face. And like the whole experience was just like, and then I'm just lying there, just like trying to like cool myself off, like hypothetically, like because I'm just can't stop thinking about it. And like, this is not like, I just couldn't. It was a test, where I think it's meant to be like so I'm going to go by myself and see if I enjoy it more, because it just, for me, I was just like, let's get to the action, like it was like, let's have some fun.
I've always wanted to do those float tanks. I'm not sure if I would like it or not. Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at like entering that just sort of meditation mind space, and then just kind of like I remember recently I went to visit my sibling in Portland, and they were like, "Oh, I want to do like a 10-minute meditation. Like it's kind of a long one if you can do it, because I know you don't do it all the time." And they meditate all the time. They're still kind of into like the woo woo stuff. Um, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm not worried about it at all. Like even though I don't do it very often, it's pretty easy for me to like get into that mind space, and like 30 minutes are gone." And I'm like, "Oh wow, that was cool." So I don't
Yeah.
know. It would be interesting to try, but I'm not sure that there is. I think it would just kind of be for fun, because I haven't looked at any of the literature on like the sensory deprivation tanks, and like if they add any sort of efficacy to like, or they make it easier to enter it. Like I don't know what the process is like at all.
I think I think traditionally, and I've just seen Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia and a bunch of like documentaries on it, but traditionally the idea was to remove as much sensory experience as you can, and then as a result you're just left with your thoughts. So it's more about, and people go in for like 3-4 hours, you know, and they'll go in for a long period of time, and they'll like do think like that people might hallucinate, or people might, you know, their brain starts to do some funny stuff when you're in that environment. I don't know if that's like what they're doing now, because like sometimes they'll play music when you first walk in, and you can turn it off and you can still hear like the jackhammering from the construction next door. So like, you know, there's a little bit of that didn't happen, but I did hear a couple of bangs. But the point is like I think it's moved away from its original intent, and now it's more gimmicky. But it's fun.
Yeah.
Like I definitely recommend it, but like it's a fun experience. But yeah,
There's a lot of that stuff in sort of the beauty, sort of like self-care industry. Like, I mean, I've there's like so many different like kind of facial things that you can get that like they'll be like FDA approved, but I will dig and dig and dig and dig, and I'm like, I cannot find any data on this like at all, and it just doesn't exist. And I'm like, who came up with this? Like put blood plasma on your face and then like do little pokes all through your face, and that's supposed to like increase your collagen production. And I'm like, I cannot find anything on this anywhere. What who came up with this shit? Yeah, it's wild.
There's is it Gwyneth Paltrow? She like has that company Gloop or something, or like I forgot what it's called. But it's like the pseudoscience of pseudoscience, like beauty products. Yeah, it's So I was hoping we could do a little segment that I would like to call "Explain It to Me Like I'm 10 Years Old." And I tried to get AI out to make this, but it was just a bunch of concerned-looking 10-year-olds. But explain it to me like I'm 10 years old.
Okay.
So I was hoping what we could do, and we might be able to clip this, and I'll send this to my transphobic aunties or something. I don't have transphobic aunties, but you know, everyone has like a transphobic relative. But I'll send it to whoever that is.
So many.
So okay. The biggest thing I hear all the time is by conservatives is that conservatives they're like, we got the science, like you're a biological male or biological female. And it's like, one, it's fucking annoying because that's not accurate. But two, it's very, like I was saying before, the concept is very simple. And what I like to say is when I want to talk to these people, I say, what is a tomboy? And they say, and they'll go like, they'll go, what do you mean? They're still a girl, or they're someone who I'm like, what is that saying there? What are you saying there? They're saying that they like, you know, a female might like, you know, masculine things, but what is that masculine there? Like, what are you talking about there? Like, and I'm trying to like tiptoe them towards like what gender is. So I want to ask you, essentially, what is biological sex? What is gender? And then what is transgender? And explain it to me like I'm 10, if that's cool.
Sure. So
biological sex. What is biological sex?
Biological sex is a collection of traits. So, you know, something we all heard in elementary school science was that boys are XX and girls are XX and boys are XY. And I think when we're talking about, sorry, you want me to explain it like you're 10? Generally speaking, for most people, that's going to be true, right? Most boys are going to be XY and most girls are going to be XX. But there are exceptions to that. There are people who are born with boy parts who actually have internal female anatomy and have the capacity to get pregnant. Whether or not it's easy for them or likely for them to carry a viable fetus to term is another conversation. Sorry, we're getting into more medical language again. But there are lots of things that go into sex, right? Sometimes when your doctor decides what, letter to put on your birth certificate, they don't evaluate your chromosomes. They go on what genitals you have outside your body. And if it's the case that somebody can have external male genitalia, but be internally and chromosomally female, then we're already getting into territory where saying boys are XY and girls are XX is not sufficient. It's true most of the time for sure, but there are absolutely edge cases. And when we're talking about trans people, we're talking about the edge cases. We're talking about the exceptions and the edges of what biology typically does. That's why it's better to say it's a bimodal distribution, right? And if you know things about statistics, that means most of the results land on 2 points on a graph, on an axis, but there are actually points all over that axis in reality. So biological sex, I would say, is a collection of traits. It has to do with your hormones. It has to do with your genitals. It has to do with your secondary sex characteristics like your boobs or your facial hair. It has to do with your chromosomes. And all of those things are at play when we're talking about biological sex. And I think when it comes to like those intersex cases, right, where somebody has external gonads that are one way and internal chromosomes that are another, most of us would consider those people cisgender, or like if somebody has external female genitalia, was raised their whole life as a girl, identifies as a girl, but finds out that they have XY chromosomes or something like that, most of us would still say, you're a cis woman. Like everything about your life has led you to the experience of a cis woman. And that's why I would argue that while I prefer the label trans for what I am, I think it's more accurate to say that trans people change their sex. Because when I'm transitioning, I'm changing the biological factors about my body. My gender has always been the same. It has never changed. But I am changing the facts about my body. I don't like the term transsexual because it's loaded politically. And we can talk about that if you want. But I would say that what I'm doing is changing my sex characteristics, and my gender has always been the same. It wasn't really a 10-year-old explanation, but
no, that it was still great. I say explain it like you're 10 because the people who need to hear this act like 10-year-olds. But so those on the right, like so Matt Walsh, for example, he'll say you typically say it's her chromosomes, which is funny because then he doesn't know what his wife is. He hasn't checked his wife's chromosomes. He doesn't know what his dad is, his mom. He doesn't know anyone. He's just walking around like, I have no idea if you're a man or a woman. He's literally like the world that he must live in, that he professes to live in, where it's like it's chromosomes and it's hard biology, is so inaccurate because he's not running around like grabbing people's junk and checking their chromosomes before he has a conversation. He's making assumptions based on how they present themselves.
Right. I also think there's some levels to how people talk about this when you get into the gender critical anti-trans arguments. So like the first level I would say is when they're on that like elementary school conceptualization of male and female, which is XX and XY chromosomes. The next level is your gametes, which is, either small mobile gametes, which in humans is sperm, or large immobile gametes, which in humans are the eggs. This tends to be the case for all mammals, as far as I'm aware. But again, when all mammals at a population level, there are exceptions in all of those species as well, just like there are in humans. The next level beyond that is usually they'll say, when you point out that, well, trans women who have had genital surgery, they're not making any gametes. So clearly gametes are insufficient to describe sex. They'll say what your body is organized around producing, which at that point to me reads as like a sexed soul, an amorphous like energy that your body was organized around producing small mobile gametes. And it's like, that's ridiculous. Like if you want to say that, before getting genital surgery, you are still a biological male, you can say that if you want. I don't know if there's actually medical utility to that. I think for a lot of trans women, even before surgery, it's probably more medically efficacious to refer to us as females in terms of like the medicine that we get. But you could say that if you wanted, but then what happens when I get the surgery? Am I no longer a biological male? And do I become a biological female? Like, these questions, they don't have answers to either. So pretending like biological sex is a gotcha is really funny, because in reality, these categories, I mean, all categories, this is just set theory in philosophy, all categories are loose and fuzzy around the edges. There's no categories that are clean cut, hard. I mean, you have things like you can't have like a square circle, right? Like a square is a square. But when it comes to like bodies in biology and social constructs and all of these things, there's no categories that are hard like that. And like I think it's fine to use the definition. Or sorry.
Oh well, I was just gonna say most people have like, oh god, is it Down syndrome? People either have like an extra chromosome or they have So and I don't know how many we have. 24 chromosomes, is that right? Normally,
23, I think it is. Yeah,
23. See, big brain. I got big brain. So typically humans have 23 chromosomes or that X amount of chromosomes, right? But
23 pairs, 46
23 pairs. Okay. But there are humans that sometimes, like, this is where it's like it's typical. Like typical humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, but there are some with an extra one. That doesn't mean they're not human or whatever.
Right.
They're just someone with Down syndrome, and that's just like. But there's a vast trend, and for the vast amount, this is why I think people don't get it. Is for the vast amount of people, they will. Leaving out gender, just biological sex. If we could test people, the vast amount of people are not intersex. The vast amount of people have, the typical, XY chromosome and the genitals to match or whatever. I don't even if that sounded ableist or whatever.
Nope,
but
you're on. You're good.
Yeah. So cool. So and that's where the discrepancy lies. But I think what you really hit the nail on the head when you said that like there's like a biological sex soul or something, because this is what I think. This is how I think people think. I think people appeal to nature and they appeal to God. I think they go, we were designed this way, and you can see it. Like I saw it on. I don't watch this podcast, but I watch someone that goes on this podcast, but the Fresh and Fit podcast. And, the question they were asking is, what were we put here for? What were we like? What do you think people were put here for? And everyone answered the question. And I was like, that's such a dumb. That's presupposing so much like shit. Like we weren't put here. We weren't created. Like we're part of an evolutionary line of history. Like that's the science, baby. Like there's no reason. Like you know what I mean? Like you're injecting so much stuff. But if you don't have that understanding, it can be very hard for someone to understand. Like why would God create someone with these other, why isn't it biology just strict? Why is it like that? And they start to make up reasons, but it's because they're coming in with a presupposition. That's why I think that you're nail on the head with the soul, the sexual soul, or the biological sex soul or something.
Yeah, but what's frustrating is I agree with you. I think 99% of the people who propagate these ideas are in that category, but you do have intellectual people propagating this, like Richard Dawkins, for example. We'll talk about like now. I actually think if I had a conversation with him, I think I could get him to agree more than he does, because I've heard him talk about changing sex. So I already know we agree on the matter of what transition is. Like you are changing your sex characteristics. Like that's what's happening. But then he'll go on to say like you can't change your sex, and I'm like, but then you're falling back on that like metaphysical definition of sex that isn't tied to reality. Like if you want to say I can't change my chromosomes, I would agree with you, but the next question would be, why the fuck do I care? Like
no
when
one
have chromosomes ever been relevant? Like never.
But the thing is, like look, I know that Rich Dawkins has definitely said some unsavory things. I appreciate him for what he's done for the field of science and skepticism stuff. I'm kind of with you. I think you could change his mind or his perspective. I think he's just really old at this stage, and it's like, dude, like, and he spent a lot of his career like dealing with people who say things that are anti-science. So I think he's like, it's almost like he's got this bias, like he's pushing really hard against in a certain narrative. But if you sat down, you're like, no, this is what we're talking about. I think he would soften right up. I don't get the vibe personally, and I haven't seen a lot of his stuff recently, that he's like a bad faith actor or anything. Like, I don't think he's like a Jordan Peterson or whatever, but I think he's just old and doesn't understand.
I think he's fallen down some propaganda rabbit holes, because I've also seen him sharing things like Abigail Schreier's book, what is it? Something in the transgender craze that's seducing our daughters, or whatever that book is. And the primary source for that book is a paper that was retracted by the publisher and denounced by the publisher because they sourced their participants from a website that was about transphobic parents coming together to talk about how much they don't think transness is real. And it's like, you have such a biased sample. Like, when he first started doing this, I tried to like post at him on Twitter, and you know, I went on Matt's show, and we had tried to like be like, we're not saying that if you do something transphobic, you are wearing the scarlet letter and you can't be recovered. We're just saying that you have bought into transphobic propaganda about trans people that is factually wrong, like on a scientific matter, which is something, you know, you think he would appeal to, but it's probably just never reached him, I'm guessing, or he just doesn't care. I don't know. And I don't really spend a lot of time wanting to change people's minds. Like, once people seem like they've got their head burrowed into the sand like that, I tend to just say, okay, I've done my part. I've voiced my thoughts at you, and I've shown the evidence. And if you don't receive it, that's not my problem anymore. But yeah, I do think that he is just old and set in his ways, but I also think he is unfortunately maybe surrounded by people or consuming content that is giving him a bad perception of the facts, and he doesn't care enough to investigate what the real facts are, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%. Yeah, it really is unfortunate. I did actually see like a while ago, Matt tell him to like fuck off and retire on Twitter, and I thought I was like, ooh, because I know they've shared a stage before and stuff. Like, I was like, oh, this is some drama. But yeah, it's hard too, because this is the thing, is and I said this to I think it was to Ben, but it was like, I don't know, actually I haven't asked Matt, but I imagine Matt considers himself cis and so like for myself, Matt, or Richard Dawkins, it's like a wrestle. Like, it's a conversation that you have, and you can argue the facts and stuff like that. But for yourself, Ben, for Chrissy, like for my trans friends, it's like, you guys are like, it's like, not only are you debating something that is like, has a lot of in like fighting amongst like there's very heated discussion, but it's like your identity. You're like having to justify your identity, and it must take so much, like, I don't know how you do it, honestly. Sometimes it's like you're just, it's like you like behind it all is like, hey, I should be able to exist, please. Like, that's what's behind it, as well as like, here are the facts, but it's like behind it, it's like you're fighting for like your like rights, your life in some way. It's like,
yeah. No, you hit the nail on the head. I actually specifically only talk about trans rights now on Transatlantic or on podcasts like this, because for me, I have just gotten to a place in my life where and some of this has to do with privilege. I was able to like get surgeries and things like that, so I passed to a large extent. Nobody ever misgenders me in public, except for my family sometimes. But that's a little bit more because that's, they knew the past me and all that stuff. No strangers ever misgender me in public. And I didn't transition so that I could talk about trans all the time. I transitioned because I'm a woman, and I just want to live my fucking life unencumbered by everyone else's bullshit. So it's like, I don't talk about these things or do these things in my personal life. Like sometimes Matt and I will see a Twitter post and we'll share it with each other and we'll be like, this person's so stupid because of X, Y, and Z. But like, I don't spend my time justifying myself anywhere else, like ever in my personal life. I'm not interested. Like, if you think I'm a man, good for you. You can go home and think that to yourself. I genuinely do not give a fuck what you think, because my life shows me every day that I'm a woman. I experience misogyny like regularly. Matt and I went to a reptile expo like a month ago, and some dude was like, while I was standing next to Matt, was like, "How long have you had the trophy wife, dude?" or whatever. And I'm like,
were you like, fuck yeah,
man?
Was it like kind of like, was it the part of it was like, yeah, fuck yeah, like, or was it, were you like, no, this is rude? Like,
it's mostly gross to me. It's like,
yeah,
what the fuck? Like I mean, like, sure, whatever. Like,
like you're now getting misogyny, which is funny. Like, is it like relief that you're getting like a little bit of misogyny, or but at the same time you're like, fuck off for the misogyny, or is it like,
it's like,
I don't know.
It's reassuring for a millisecond in the sense that I'm like, okay, well, I know I don't look like a man to this person, but it's also then it's like, oh, but you're being a fucking pig, so what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like you're oh god, yeah.
This is kind of like a meme in the trans community. Like the first time I noticed it, I was working one of my old jobs. I used to work in group homes and with a bunch of individual clients and stuff. And one of my clients would constantly insist that I was a man, but would never misgender me and would call me a bitch. And you guys are cool with saying cunt in Australia, so I'll say that. He would call me a bitch and a cunt all the time at work. And I mean, he was a kid with like behavioral issues, so like I didn't take it personally, but I was like, I love how you call me a man, but then you call me a bitch and a cunt. Like, I don't see you doing that to the other men who work here. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, is it like, it's like, yay, I'm being treated as a woman. Oh no, I'm being treated as a woman. Is it like because there's like, you have like, is it like a double-edged sword in some sort of ways? But
yeah, I mean,
mostly
it's like, yeah, I think it's more of like, it's reassuring to know that like sometimes, dysphoria will tell me like, like I look like a man or whatever. It's nice to be like, okay, well that part of my brain is clearly wrong, but then it's like, but now I actually have to deal with the facts that I'm dealing with misogyny in the real world. So it's like, that's never a good feeling,
yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Okay, explain it to me like I'm 5. This is the saucy one. Like I'm 10. See, I told you, my brain does like so explain it to me like I'm 10. What is gender? This is the saucy one, because this is the thing that a lot of people don't understand.
Okay, so to start, we have to separate something. Gender is used in multiple different ways to refer to different concepts. When we're talking about my gender is woman, we're talking about gender identity. Gender identity is I don't remember where I heard this term the first time, but since people have credited it to me, which is wrong, I stole it from someone else, but apparently I've been loud enough about using it that for some reason that has been a thing. I will say it's a durable psychological construct, much like sexuality or your handedness or your personality. It's distinct from those things. But I would also say it's not orthogonal from, sexuality and sex. It's not unrelated to those things, but it is distinct and separate from them in that it is a different construct. They may influence each other to some, just with some effect, but it is distinct. And it is largely durable over someone's life, but there are exceptions to that. There are some people who feel like it is more fluid for them. But for most people, it is largely durable and consistent over the course of someone's life. And that is like their perception of their body in a gendered and sexed world, right? Like that is me, how I relate to my body in a world where sex is a thing that exists and where people have highly gendered expectations. The other definition of gender would be the socially held expectations and beliefs that people have for men and women, boys and girls. Like boys play with trucks and girls are princesses and those sorts of things. That's when we're talking about gender as a social construct. But it's really important to know that gender identity and gender as a social construct are distinct things, because I see regularly people conflating the two, and it's, I think, a huge, because people will be referring to like, if gender is a social construct, why do you need to transition? And it's like, well, because you are asking, it's like asking like, if some people are ambidextrous, why do you write with your right hand? Like, the unrelated questions. Like, those things do not exist in the same space. Like, yes, some people are ambidextrous, and yes, some people are neurologically wired to write with their right or left hand. Like, yes, gender is a social construct. Men and women can be and express their gender in any way that they want, and society has fluctuated vastly across culture and time, the way that gender is viewed. But that being said, that is distinct from the concept of gender identity, which is the psychological model that I have in my mind of me as a person in this world.
Interesting. You see, okay, that's something I don't fully understand, well, I'm learning. So okay, that's super interesting. So gender identity. So with your gender identity, so like the internal view of yourself, if, for example, if we lived in a world where men grew their nails out and painted their nails and went like this instead of like this, or whatever you did before,
Yeah.
you know, do you think you would be, your gender would be a male in that world? Like if it was topsy turvy, like how does that?
Right. This is actually a really fascinating question. I would think that. Okay, so also all of this is different from gender expression, how you choose to personally, you know, and express those things. I suspect, but I don't know, because it would be wildly unethical to perform some sort of study on this. But I suspect that in that sort of world, I would start doing this and the womanly things, because my suspicion is that. So,
Wow.
so there's no hard answer as to why people's gender identity is the way it is. There are some theories about like uterine environment, like hormone washes and exposure in the during pregnancy. Those are some of the dominating theories. There are also like, you know, brain structures of trans people seem to represent more of the sex that they identify with than the sex they were assigned at birth. But none of those are really good, reliable answers to why someone has a gender identity that is incongruent with their sex assigned at birth. I suspect that if we lived in a society where the gender roles were flopped, I would aspire to express myself in a way that people would read as woman, regardless of, like, it's not this that makes me feel like a woman. It's, I want to express that I'm a woman, and this is woman. You know what I mean? Like, I think gender is, Natalie Wynn, ContraPoints, did a great video on how gender is sort of a language. A lot of trans people, when they first transition, will really overexert the femininity from trans women and the masculinity from trans men, or like the complete androgyny from non-binary people. Not because that's necessarily an authentic representation of who they are, as much as I desperately want the world to know, without me having to spell it out for them, that I'm a woman. And even if maybe it's a little ridiculous or over the top, if I perform womanhood for people, that's what's going to make them see me as a woman. Like, I don't necessarily know that I have a strong feeling about hair length. Like, I like my hair like this, but also I can tell you there's a lot of drawbacks to having long hair.
Someone was
waiting for it to dry, styling it is exhausting and time consuming, right? But I do not want short hair at all, because that would probably extremely masculinize me in this society. So I suspect that in the reverse gender role society, I would express myself in the way that society determined womanhood. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you're right, and maybe it would be the other way. It's really hard to say.
I don't know. Like I've often wondered this. Like if someone grew up in a vacuum, and when I think of that, I always imagine someone just floating around in space and like being fed nutrients somehow. But like if someone was like grew up in a vacuum, like I wonder if like how they would. I wonder if gender would play a role. You know what I mean? Like I wonder if it's like it's part of being human, being part of a society, being part of a tribe, like socially constructing our place in the universe and the world and our environment that actually forms gender, or if it's something that's like innate. It's like a I don't know, like biology, like it's like literally part of the brain. Like you cut out the gender part of the brain and or something. Like I don't know, I don't know.
There's
What are
some
your thoughts?
good theory on this. A great book is I don't agree with everything that this person says. Oh, now I'm blanking on the book. Judith Butler is the author. Judith Butler, Gender Trouble.
Oh
She
yeah.
is a philosopher. She, granted, she uses a lot of jargon specific to her theories in her book that sometimes it can be a little bit hard to follow. But her theory is basically that the gender roles that we have now, to what extent that there may be like biological roots, is kind of completely irrelevant because we have. She uses the word reify, which basically means that like you and I grew up with families who presented gender to us in a certain way, and to what extent we change those as adults, probably by and large, it's minor compared to the ways in which we reaffirm those expectations of gender. And that's called like reification under her model. Like we reify gender roles. And so there is a lot of theory about gender and how it is formed, like these gender roles. I think it's pretty clear to me that it is socially built and there's not much biological root. But at the same time, I don't know. Also, as I get tipsier, I'm losing my train of thought a lot quicker.
Yeah,
So, my ability to
a
wax
philosophize.
philosophically
Yeah.
can't even talk
I know.
is decreasing rapidly.
This is the magic of deep drinks. Subscribe. We have amazing guests coming up.
I love
We have
tequila. It's the best.
So, if we were to explain it like you're 10 years old, so for me, when I look at gender, I go, gender is like, this is how I would describe gender if I was talking to a 10-year-old. It's like how someone, and I'd like to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like how someone feels. Essentially, it's how someone identifies with either masculine or feminine traits in the society that we've constructed. So it's just kind of like I go back to my analogy before, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that analogy. And I actually thought of this analogy when I was not this analogy, the question, when I was arguing with a distant relative that came over to our house and said, Michelle Obama's a boy. And I was like, oh God, like it was QAnon levels of conspiracy. And we got into the whole conversation. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I said, what, and they said, oh, I was a tomboy growing up. I said, what do you mean there? What do you mean by tomboy? What does that mean to you? Like, what are you talking about? What's the boy there? And they couldn't get the question, but I was trying to get to the point. I was like, when they say tomboy, they're ascribing the masculine characteristics of what a boy is in that society. So when someone's like growing up and they like more identify with that certain thing, so not necessarily saying tomboys are like trans or anything. That's not even the same realm of what I'm talking about. But it's like, imagine someone growing up and they're like, I feel as though I am a boy rather than a girl, and that's all it is. It's just it's the fact of how people feel, and that's what I would say gender is to a 10-year-old.
I think that's good. I think if I were to adapt kind of something that Katie Montgomery has said on our show a lot of times, if I were to take, if I'm talking to a 10-year-old boy, if I were to take you and force you to wear dresses and take away all your toys and only give you dolls and tell you all your friends have to be girls, how would you feel? Would it feel good to you or would it feel wrong? Because that's how I felt growing up. Like I wanted to take dance lessons with my cousin. I wanted to do, play house with the girls. And for a little bit of time when I was really young, I was kind of allowed to get away with that. But then I got old enough to where my dad expected me to start playing sports. And so I was forced to play sports. I was forced to go ice fishing with him in the winter. I was forced to do all these super masculine things that I hated, that did not represent me how I felt at all. And I think that's kind of a way that somebody can, I don't know if it necessarily represents gender, but it is how someone can be aware of what their gender is. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you contrast that with biological sex, you have biological sex, which is like very simply put, it's like you said, it's like what would you say, a modal? You used a word like it's
bimodal
like
distribution.
Bimodal distribution of like characteristics that we typically find, and there are people that fall all over the spectrum, but it's usually in two distinct areas. Then we have gender, which is how people kind of feel about and how they identify with the world and things like that. So that's pretty simple, right? This is what I mean by it seemed quite simple. And these are facts. These aren't like there's no wokeness here, there's no magic here, there's no like anything. So then going on from those two things is like, so what is transgender? So could you describe what transgender is with those, like a 10-year-old?
Yeah, so to be trans is just to be aware that your gender identity is different from what people would expect given your sex. So I was assigned male at birth. People expected that because I was male that I was going to be a boy and I was a girl. That's just how that I don't know how else to explain that more simply. Like yeah, if I'm explaining to a 10-year-old, I guess that's my that's how I would do it.
That's fantastic. And I think that's as simple as it actually is. Like you could clip that whole last minute and go, that's actually just what the whole conversation is. But the media and Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson, and all the like people on both sides, like there's extremism on both sides, have made it into like this huge like issue where people are more concerned about drag queens teaching their kids than kids getting shot up in schools, or and it's absolutely bizarre. Like people are worried about transgender identifying people coming into bathrooms, but they let their kids go to church or to religious institutions where they're considerably more likely to get sexually abused. It makes me I also don't think do you know the streamer, you probably, a lot of people don't like him, do you know Destiny, the streamer?
I know Destiny.
Yeah,
unfortunately. I know Destiny.
Here we go. So he has this really great point. And one of the points he has is he doesn't believe that conservatives give a shit about any of the grooming kids or anything like that, like at all. He doesn't care, because he said, because if it was true that was the case, he's like, where was the outrage when like all the Honey Boo Boo like beauty pageants was going around? Like, where was the outrage on all that? Where was the outrage with taking young boys to Hooters and like getting a photo? Like, there's no outrage. No one gave a shit at all.
Right.
Maybe there was a few fringe people voicing their concerns, but no one cared. But as soon as it has something to do with the LGBT community, all of a sudden it's like the worst thing imaginable. So he says he doesn't believe that people actually give a shit about that. That they're just dog whistling for their community.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably true. Yeah, I mean, I think at the same time they wouldn't consider any of that stuff grooming. I think they genuinely think that's normal, and would. I think part of the issue is that they have so thoroughly devalued the word grooming that they don't actually know what it means anymore. It's just like communist. Like, it's just the thing I don't like is what groomer is. And they know that groomer is like the thing I don't like plus probably a little gay. Like, that's like the extent of their conception of it. But yeah, no, I think I mean, I won't share too many thoughts about Destiny, but I think he has good points sometimes.
Some of his sometimes he like, look, I'm not like a big stan for Destiny or anything. I watch a lot of his content because I find what he talks about is really interesting, and don't agree with him with everything, of course. But yeah, some of the conversations you have are pretty funny, like some of his debates and stuff. But I definitely know that he has some problems, especially with riding the fence, I guess, between like left and right with some of his perspectives.
He's got some horrible takes on trans care for minors, where like, so for me, like something I've heard him say before is that the evidence for trans care for minors is not there. Is pretty much what he said. I think he says almost exactly like it's not there, and I would concede that the evidence for trans healthcare in general is not at the place that it is for, say, like diabetes or cancer treatment, but it's pretty much square on par with where it is for every other psychological state of being that we consider something that could get psychological treatment. Like, could the evidence be stronger? Absolutely. I always support more, harder evidence. However, when it comes to medicine and skepticism, the way we decide what care we give is we evaluate the evidence, we do a cost-benefit analysis, and then we take the best option of those that exist. Now, could there potentially, hypothetically, in the future, arise some sort of treatment method that is superior to the hormone blocker? Like, so right now, the current standards of treatment, usually it's social transition until you enter Tanner stage 2 puberty, which is usually around like 12. Then you do puberty blockers for about 2 years. After 2 years, having no sexual hormones in your body does result in like bone density loss and potential issues with brain development. But that's why that's not in the standards of care to go longer than 2 years on that. You would then go on to either reduce the dose of the hormone blockers and just let your endogenous hormones come in, or you would do the cross-sex hormones at that point. And yeah, like the evidence could be stronger, but science and medicine is about taking the best evidence that we have and going with that path. And currently, that is what the evidence supports. Would I like to see stronger evidence? Absolutely. But yeah, I've heard him give some really stupid takes about like, it's not there. And I'm like, it's not where. It's not
I've heard him say, like, I swear I've heard him say the opposite, where he's like, do you want the state to like step in and like and walk over, like, I don't know, but maybe we've seen, I don't know, maybe we've seen, I'll look my, like, honestly, like I said, I'm not like
likes to phrase things in an inflammatory way because it gets him attention, is what I think.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
He also always walks back everything that he says on social media on his actual stream. He's like,
he's
like a master shady fucking with his words. Yeah,
he's very, very, very. He's like, give credit where credit is due. He's able to provoke people on Twitter enough to get them into a conversation on his channel.
Oh yeah,
yeah. There's I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Oh, this is where the alcohol takes too much of an effect.
Yeah.
Oh, darn. Oh no, it was a really good point. It was so profound that everyone was going to be blown away.
Oh no, I'm like preemptively blown away. You know,
yeah.
The audience,
everyone would have subscribed. Everyone would have subscribed. They would have all gone like they would have signed up to their mum's account and like subscribed. They would have. So, darn, what? It's really, really annoying me that I forgot. Okay, yes, I remember what I was saying. Actually, this wasn't the profound thing, so still subscribe. But this is something that I thought of. This was what I was thinking of, but it's not that profound now. I remember it. But it's funny how they talk about like conservatives will talk about, and sorry for everyone to get political, but conservatives on the right or the alt-right will talk about the idea that it's like irreversible damage, like you were just mentioning. And like you point out that it's kind of not. But what is really funny is the conservative or the alt-right community are really big on circumcision, right? Which is irreversible genital mutilation. Like, but think about that. Think about how no one like even bats an eye. Like everyone's just like, we had our little boy Atlas. Two things actually. They go, people used to go, what are you having? I'm like, well, we won't know. And I used to say this to annoy my religious family. I go, we won't know until he's old enough to tell us. They're old enough to tell us, right? And they'll be like, and then everyone will go like, oh, because it's just a way to trigger everyone. But yeah, our lad Atlas, people were saying like, oh, you're gonna get him circumcised, and I was just like, why? That's such a weird. Like I know it's common in America, like it's not very common in Australia.
Yeah.
And I think circumcised penis probably looks more aesthetically pleasing. but
I think that's only the case because it's so commonplace in American media. Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if it's that's like a conditioned preference, not like a innate one or anything like that. Like,
yeah, we're at the part of the stream where I consider myself mostly straight, and I just called a circumcised penis aesthetically pleasing. So, well done, everyone. We got there, everyone. Yeah, so it's just interesting about that. We've been talking for an hour and a half. I do want to get to some super chats and some questions, but I just want to quickly touch on a few questions that you mentioned before that I want to kind of like dive into a little bit.
Sure.
Transsexual. So there's a few things. I don't know what a transsexual is. I know that did it used to be like a term people use, but then also you're in the adult entertainment industry, or at least you're an adult content creator. Which, by the way, I swear I nearly got fired for having your Twitter feed up on my like desktop, and then like some let me see, what's the word?
I had not safe for work. Oh yes,
it was very not safe for work. Is that Matt?
Yeah, that's Matt. He's bringing me a snake. I told him to bring me the one who had babies. Thank you so much.
Oh, hey Matt, tell Matt I said hi.
David said hi. We had apparently a rat catastrophe while I was gone, but. Sorry. I just wanted to show. This is Blossom. Her baby's just hatched, and she's back to eating, and she looks great. She's super healthy, and she's so beautiful. She is a black pastel mahogany banana ball python. So you can see all those freckles.
Look at the dots. Yeah,
those are right from her banana. But she is a sweet girl, a great girl.
Do they bite much? Like, do you get bitten much by your snakes, or is it like rare?
I've handled, like I said, we have like 60 snakes. We handle them all multiple times a week. So like hundreds of interactions every week. I've been bitten once by a ball python, and I've been bitten, not even really an actual bite, once by a corn snake, but no, they'll blush strike at you, where they'll lunge at you like they're about to bite, but they don't actually open their mouth. They're just trying to scare you away. They're trying to tell you to back the fuck off.
Like a headbutt kind of thing. Yeah.
Wow.
What?
I could bring in a snake that would pretty much guaranteed to bite you.
No, Chani can stay right where she is. She's our snake that is bitey. Thank you. I just wanted to show her off. She's so pretty.
That's awesome. So Matt's been on deep drink. Matt's been on deep drinks, everyone.
Hey.
Matt and I've been talking about coming on for ages. It's like he's finally made it. He's on deep.
He'll get there. Apparently he had a whole rat catastrophe. But sorry, let's get back to what you were saying.
Yes. First of all, thank you for showing the snake. That's awesome. It makes me want to get a snake, but I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for the excitement to die down to see if it's something I want to commit to, because it's obviously pets, so you want to keep them. So yeah, you're an adult content creator, and so I know that big in the naming conventions in porn haven't always been, it'd be like, cum dumpsters 5 or semen slurpers 11 or whatever. Like it's like the words for like the titles are like fucked, or like even the fact that there's like an interracial like element in porn categories like feels funny to me. I'm like, why is this a kink? Like I get it, some people might have it, but it's like it feels a little racist almost. Like, but anyway.
Oh yeah.
So there's the term trannies, right? Is that a derogatory term, or is that like that's a term that's used in porn? Or TS girls or like.
So tranny would be a slur. I would say TS is like, it's technically short for transsexual, but in porn, it's basically a category, as a way to say trans. I think the most socially appropriate way that everyone understands is trans. You should just say trans. No, not transgender, not transsexual, just trans. Everyone knows what that means. It conveys exactly the information that's necessary. I would say, saying out. I don't even want to like say it again because I don't want to get your chance of your YouTube getting in trouble or whatever. But like, I would say tranny is a slur.
Okay.
I definitely. I say
feels
it all
like
the time as a joke because I think it's funny, because Mostly I like doing it to like Matt or like my friends and like kind of being like, fucking say it, because I know they won't. And it's funny because it's like I'm like, haha, I've got the one thing I have power over the oppressive class on is making them say the slur. But yeah, I think so. Porn categories are a little shitty. A company that I did my first pro shoot with a couple months ago, Groovy, they're actually kind of were like the pioneers in well, I should give the credit to Chelsea. I'm forgetting her name. It's Chelsea something. She was an individual who really fought for Chelsea Poe, who fought for proper language in the porn industry. And the first one to really adopt that wholeheartedly was groovy.com. So I probably shouldn't say the actual website because, again, I don't want to get anything in trouble. But they have like a huge host of websites that are under them, and they've been really good about making sure that their categorization is both catering to the demographic that would buy that content, which means you kind of have to give in a little bit to that, but also trying to make it as acceptable as possible. And the producers that I've worked with in that specific company were outstanding on the respect and knowledge of things and way to be kind and understanding in the process. So definitely like huge props to that company in particular. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of language in it that's still a little, that's not really like socially acceptable.
I love when porn companies get like do like good things. Like I know that like what good things. Again, I'm losing my words, but like when Pornhub, I mean, this was a marketing strategy, but it was also fucking awesome that they did this. But they offered like Pornhub free Pornhub premium accounts to everyone when COVID lockdown was happening. So it was like stay home and like masturbate. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. They did some. They like there's companies that do like research into like what it's like healthy like amounts of porn people should watch, or what type of porn is like can lead to, or not lead to, but like is probably shouldn't be promoted in our algorithm and things like that. Like, and I'm like, that's all. That's fine. It's just so weird to see like or like companies going environmentally friendly and stuff, like carbon neutral. So you're like, this is just, it's weird to see what I always considered like an evil. Like when I was a Christian, I used to pray against the adult shop in Tawantin, and then it shut down, and I'm like, our prayers work, but it was just a refurbishment. They're actually growing bigger, and I was like, oh no, our prayers didn't work. Oh, we got to go pray again. But like, I used to think it was like socially evil, but like now I'm like, well, like people enjoy porn, and it's like fantastic, like great that they're doing good in some and like you said, that like let's have more inclusive language, and like that's great.
It is interesting, right? Because I think we all kind of grew up with this notion that even if you weren't super Christian, probably you had some perception of porn as like degenerate or bad for society or whatever. But really, the people who are who have been producing porn, who have been into porn, are going to be people who were sort of counterculture to begin with, and that's kind of led to a industry that is. Now, I want to be super clear. There is a lot of problems in the industry still, so many. But that being said, a lot of the individual actors within the community, as particularly the actual actors, are very progressive, and they have pushed for a really strong, like, even though there is still a lot of like treat me like an object mentality in some of the content itself, they push for like, yes, that is like the things that I'm asking to be called, but that is all consensual. Like I'm asking to be called those things. I want that sort of like that experience, and I want you guys to know that it is like a consensual thing. I think that's like I mean, like, I don't know, that's I've always been very kinky and sexual. I mean, I had a portion of my life that we didn't talk about, and probably for good reason, is that I had some my relationship with sex is kind of fucked up from my childhood, and so I had a little bit of a sexual deviancy era in my life that included like some sex clubs and stuff. And I really feel like
next time on Deep Drinks,
I feel like I've really kind of grown as a person, and I just like, I don't know, I like the liberation of sex, and being able to talk about like, yeah, you can call me like a cum dumpster, but like on my terms. Not as a matter of like that's the only way you get clicks is by making me dehumanized. Like I want to be dehumanized, but like because I asked you to.
No, and that totally makes sense. And I really I'm a purveyor of adult cinema. I prefer like as Shannon Q
as
said,
you should be.
I'm a critic of the cinema. I like the camera angles and the but and I do appreciate at the end where like it might be like a bit more of a kinky scene, or it might be a bit more where is this podcast going? But anyway, it might be a bit more of a kinky scene, a bit more like aggressive, or a bit more I guess like you're saying, like using derogatory words or like phrases or the way they treat each other. And at the end, they'll have like a sit down on the couch and they'll be like, oh, like, so how do you feel about this? Oh, I felt good, like I felt comfortable. And it's like the dialogue happens beforehand. And I think is it kink.com or something? They like, maybe we shouldn't be saying these things, but there's like websites where like they'll have a conversation beforehand. What are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? Like cool, like look, this is what I want to do. Oh, I'm excited to do that. Cool, and then they'll do it, and then afterwards they'll talk about the experience. And it's like seems like a responsible way to engage if you are into that kind of stuff, to engage in that kind of material.
Yeah, I think there's been some recent movements. There's a like huge cancel Pornhub movement on Twitter that is actually funded by the documentary that was on Netflix recently does a great job going into it in depth, but is really funded by a fundamental like evangelical organization at its roots, and they will use these really compelling stories that will get liberals on board where like children were abused or whatever, and that's important. That should not happen, and that is egregious, which is why I was like, I want to be clear that there are bad things that happen in the industry and that needs to be called out. However, I think the industry has been moving in a direction of like really caring deeply about those kind of processes and like really going through making sure that like consent is a big part of everything. Like something I've loved about the groups that I worked with was like the producer at one of the sets was like, is it okay if I move your phone over here? And I'm like, dude, you're asking for consent to move my phone. Like you can just move my phone. I promise it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not going to pretend that consent is like at the forefront of every producer's set, but the ones that I've worked on, it has been. And I've been really lucky to do mostly self-produced stuff where I'm working with individual creators. And that's been great too, because that puts all the power in our hands and what we want to do and what we want to make, rather than necessarily like being at the behest of some like producer or agent or something like that. So it's a really cool part of the industry, and I'm not as I would love to have more time to be in that, but as you saw the snake, we have 60 of them. All of my free time goes to animals, so I don't have as much time as I want, but I would do more if I could.
I do remember you saying that. Well, your link tree is in the comments, so people can go and check it out. You've got an Instagram where because Twitter is being a bit funny lately. So if you want to go follow Arden on Twitter, on Instagram, go check out the Instagram, and of course, Call the Line is always there. The Line, absolutely great show, fantastic. Let's get into some questions as we wrap up. I said we weren't going to go over 2 hours, so let's do this.
We're fine. We're good.
First of all, Jimmy Snow, the man, the myth, the legend. First of all, actually, not even Jimmy Snow. We'll start with this comment. Thank you. £5
Go fuck yourself,
pound a year. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. So yeah, good work. And Jimmy Snow comes in. It's funny actually. Let me just say this, Jimmy. I know that Jimmy hates compliments, so as a way of me saying "go fuck yourself, Jimmy," every time on Twitter, I just like say, "Jimmy, you're the best, man. Like you're such an inspiration to like." And I really over the top compliment him, and he he doesn't reply, so I know he so I know he fucking hates it. And I'm sitting here chuckling to myself like, ha ha ha.
He genuinely hates it. We were at the meeting after the fundraiser we did recently, and I was like genuinely complimenting him because he did so much to make it happen, and he was like, I'm so uncomfortable. You guys know I hate this. And I'm like, oh my God, get over it. Shows best in order. Well, obviously, Takis, #1, Transatlantic Call-In Show. #1 show on the line. You guys got to call in if you have any questions about anything related to trans issues. We would be happy to talk to you. I would say probably the Sunday show is my #2. I mean, I think it's just a classic, Sunday morning, rather than going to church, you get to listen to some atheist debates. That's great. I think 3 is probably the hang up for me because I like to have the more political conversations. And obviously I love Matt, and I love that that's his passion project. I think probably Skep Talk would be next because I mean, the conversations with Forrest and Erica really have rocketed Skep Talk to the top. I mean, Forrest and Erica are such a power duo, although they're not on every week by far. It is a pretty awesome duo. And then I love Dave Warnock to pieces. He is a gem for the atheist community, and as like a personal friend, he is such an amazing person. Probably him, and then Hostility, because I don't know, I haven't been a part of Hostility really. I haven't seen many episodes of Hostility. I haven't produced many episodes of Hostility, so Hostility's on the bottom. But that would be my ranking. I can't do all the coworkers. We have way too many hosts and co-hosts online. Jimmy's on the bottom though, that's for sure.
That's great. He spoke very highly of you, so that's it's
we are
so
good
funny.
friends. Despite all the jokes, Jimmy also, like Katie and I, is on the love language of bullying each other for friendship. But no, genuinely, Jimmy is one of the most hardworking people I've ever met, to his detriment often.
He's a bit of a psychopath. I've kind of like got the vibe of.
Like, he needs to stop. But you know, I get why he does it. Like, we have almost identically opposite philosophies on life. I found out where he's like, I'm like, I don't want to be on the treadmill. I hate feeling like I'm on the treadmill. It's the only time I'm on the bottom in life. That's it. Whereas he's like, I'm working all the time, so I'm not on the treadmill eventually. And I'm like, I get that, but I just I can't wrestle with that.
Yeah, he needs to be like institutionalized, but like on a desert island with like, you know, with like a coconut and like, you know, massages and stuff. Like he needs to like someone's like grab him and force him to. But I get the feeling though that, and Jimmy can comment. He's in the chat now. Can comment that he probably would hate that. Like you love a vacation for the first couple of days, but if you're not working on like a project or something, I feel very much myself anyway that I get like depressed and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what's the next thing? But I'm working with a therapist to deal with that actually.
I think that's fair. But yeah, no, I definitely think love Jimmy Turley. He definitely needs to take a proper break for himself. I'm sure he's like very ill in bed right now, but watching this while also working at the same time. It's like, Jimmy, fucking go to sleep or chill. What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I have some questions for you, but just quickly, just shout out a couple of new episodes coming up. We have the Bible from Babylon, the Bible's roots with Professor Matthew Monga. We're talking about like the inspiration from Babylon for Genesis, which will be really cool. And then we have Islam apologetics, the failure of Islam apologetics with Nuria Khan, Holy Humanist. If you like content like this, make sure you subscribe to this channel and send these videos to your fundamentalist auntie. She'll love them. I'm telling you. So
hell yeah. Was that Daniel Hikikachu I saw on the thumbnail there? What a fucking clown.
Oh dude. So I used him because when he debated Nuria Khan, he blurred her face in the cover photo. And I was like, you fucking piece of shit. And he did that. I think partly because she wasn't wearing a hijab, but also because he was being a dickhead. So I was like, I'm getting him back. So he has nothing to do with the fact that, except for the fact that he said that maybe 3-year-olds should be able to get married or married off by their parents. Besides the fact that he said that in his debate with Inspiring Philosophy, I was like, okay, let's chuck him in there as a big fuck you to him because and we're gonna be just talking about apologetics.
Such a piece of shit. His whole debate on defending child marriage is the most disgusting, vile, steaming pile of shit I've ever seen in my life. Like the dregs of society is Daniel Hikikachu.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I normally ask a bunch of like questions about God and stuff, but I'm gonna flip it a little bit because I think your like people have said, and I'll share this at the very end in the outro, but people have been commenting that you're such an inspiration, blazed by fire. Someone said, it seems. So you know, a lot of people, there might be people watching this now who are going through gender dysphoria, and they might be struggling, or they might know someone who is. So what would you suggest to someone who may be young or maybe be experiencing gender dysphoria? What advice would you give to them?
I would say that gender dysphoria is a thing that just happens. We don't know why, but it is a thing that we've seen time and time again, happens to people sometimes for some reason. And the evidence clearly shows time and time and time again that the best thing for gender dysphoria is for people to transition. This is just what the facts and the evidence show. The best way to improve your quality of life, to reduce your risk of suicide and depression and suicidality, your best way to feel integrated into your community is to transition. Whether that means for you socially or medically, whatever that means, transition is just the objectively the most scientifically based way to go about helping you alleviate your dysphoria. And while our society has a lot of issues around gender identity and sex, and some of that may be weighing on you, it is imperative for you to do the work internally to accept and love yourself, and to understand that if somebody else thinks that you're a freak show, or if you're a trans woman that you're really a man, that's okay for them to think that. People can be wrong. People are allowed to be wrong, and as shitty as it makes you feel, that's just unfortunately the burden of being a minority in a society. And the best thing for you to do is listen to what you feel inside, trust the evidence and your doctor, and get the care that's right for you. And yeah.
What would you say to yourself if you go back in time to maybe when you were thinking about detransitioning, that's the word, thank you.
I would say that I know you think that this is going to be easier, that this is somehow going to make the trans issue go away, that you're going to be able to like bury that, and just, if it's going to be hard either way is kind of your mindset right now. But the reality is that denying the facts about who you are is going to be infinitely more damaging than the bigotry that people will put upon you. One is other people doing it to you because they don't understand. The other is you doing it to yourself. And as far as we're concerned, because I'm pretty sure you thought this back in the day too, there is no afterlife. This is the one shot you've got at it. So I urge you to love yourself more and do it sooner. And don't waste time trying to appease partners or your family. Do what's right for you, and those people will join along the way if they're good for you. And if they don't join you along the way, fuck those people. The people who are good for you will join your life when it's the right time.
That advice is fantastic, even outside of the conversation parameters. Like, we just grab life by the balls, like, get 60 snakes if you want 60 snakes, travel the world if you want to travel the world, this is the one life that we have. And I'll say this, like, if I'm going to be very pedantic, this is the only guaranteed life that we have. And let's help each other, let's love each other, let's enjoy it every day, hug your relatives, bring them over for barbecue, your friends and family if you have them, and just appreciate what we have, because I think Arden is spot on there. Thank you, Arden, so much for coming on. I really, we went back and forth a little bit trying to set up dates for this, and I'm so glad it's been everything I hoped it would be. So
yeah, this was awesome. I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, everyone, I'll see you guys in a few days for Matthew Monger's episode, and we'll keep thinking deep. I don't actually have a catchphrase. I just catchphrase. See you guys. Bye.